Welcome to an actual beginner's guide to playing Dota 2. If you are completely new to the genre and Dota itself, you are 100% in the right place. And if you know a thing or two but need more, don't worry, I've got you covered too. Check the timestamps below to skip around the pieces you need to learn more about. Now, let's get on with the video. Tip number 1, what the hell is a Moba? First things first, you'll need to understand what a Moba is. If you already know this, great, go ahead and skip to the next part. Again, timestamps down below. For the rest of you, let me quickly explain the pieces of the Moba puzzle so you can get started on your journey to becoming a hero. Moba is an acronym for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena. The first bit, Multiplayer Online, just means you play online with other people. The latter part is the focus here, Battle Arena. It means you're going to be confined within an area with enemy players. There will be a goal to determine who wins, but it will certainly include a lot of fighting. Most MOBAs have 2 ways to power up, so you're more likely to win said fights. One is to upgrade your abilities and buy powerful items. To do either of these, you'll need to do what we call farming, which is attacking and killing enemy players or the enemy computer-controlled creeps, little monsters, to gain gold and experience points. Think of defeating a Pokemon trainer. Your Pokemon gain experience points and you get gold to buy shiny new items for them. It's a little bit like that. So you now think you're ready to go and have the best MOBA experience ever. Wrong. You don't even know how to move a muscle yet. Dota has a lot of moving parts, so let's learn how to wrangle control of them. Tip number 2, we're going to focus on 3 key controls to get you started. Moving your hero, moving the camera, and using your abilities. To move your hero, just right-click anywhere on the ground. That will move you to exactly where you clicked, if possible, taking the shortest possible route. If you right-click on an enemy hero or creep, your hero will move towards them until they can hit the target with an auto-attack, and will continue to attack them until you give your hero a different command. And that's it. That's all you need to know about hero movement. Camera movement is a little more interesting, because there are 3 main ways to do it. The default way is to move your cursor to the edge of the screen where you would like your camera to move. So if I want the camera to move up, I just put my cursor near the top of the screen. Option 2 is the camera drag. Set a keybind, I'd recommend a mouse button that isn't left or right click, then hold that key in and drag your mouse to drag the camera along with you. Option 3 is what I use, which is moving the camera entirely with keys, using usually WASD. Rebind the directional camera movement to the 4 keys you want, then as you play, simply use those keys to move the camera. There is no one true way of doing it. The default is what most people use. I find WASD more comfortable for me though, but pick whichever makes sense to you. Now, before I jump into the last bit, a little extra camera tip is to make sure you are clicking on the mini-map to move your camera large distances. If you want to see something on the opposite side of the map, instead of slowly moving the camera all the way there, just click on your minimap. It's much faster and will save you a lot of time. The last controls you need to know about are your abilities. Your 4 main abilities will likely be the keys you'll use the most in the game, and you'll need many of them very quickly. So they are defaulted to QWER, but as I use WASD to move, I've put them on 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically, you need to have these in an extremely easy place to access. You then have 8 item keys to bind, 6 normal items, 1 neutral item, and 1 teleportation scroll. Don't worry about the details, just know that many Dota items have activatable abilities, so I'd recommend at least 3 or 4 of these normal item slots be keys that you can reach easily and quickly. You'll also need that teleportation scroll quite often, so make sure you can reach that one too. As an example, I use ZX and C as well as spacebar for 4 easy item slots to hit, and then my 2 side mouse buttons for the others, as I'm not particularly practiced in hitting them as quickly. One final control you will need to bind and learn early on is the Select Hero button. If you double tap this button, it will center the camera on your hero. So whenever you get lost playing those first games of Dota and you are completely confused about where you are, double tap that button to find yourself again. So it's time to play, but when you hit the play button, there are a bunch of options. So let's go through those to find the right game mode for you. First and foremost, there is a tutorial, but very few tutorials really give you a feeling of the game, so you will quickly move on from there. If you haven't tried to play recently, you might not know that there's actually a new player mode now. It uses the simpler turbo rules, which we'll get into later, only allows a few heroes to be played, and has no penalty for leaving. You'll just get replaced by a bot. Definitely dive into this one to start learning the game. After that, we have a few options. You can play co-op or solo versus bots, so the enemy team will be entirely computer-controlled players. This is a great way to learn a new hero or perhaps focus on some specific mechanics without any stress of enemy players. If you want to get into real games though, you are looking at either normal, could be ranked or unranked, and turbo. Normal games can last anywhere from 15 minutes to 3 hours depending on the current state of the game. As such, the game tends to be a lot slower, giving you time to learn, but requiring a bigger investment of time. You also have to go to a specific place on the map to buy certain items, and your item delivery service, the courier, can die. Turbo is a much faster version with golden experience in abundance. Games are usually a lot shorter, lasting from 10 to at most 60 minutes. You'll have to play a bit faster, but the games are usually more casual. Whatever you decide to jump into, you'll want to know what role you intend to play. So for tip number 4, let's go through those. There are 5 positions in Dota and 2 roles. The roles are core and support, with the core positions being the position 1 carry, position 2 mid, position 3 offlaner, and the support being position 4 soft support and position 5 hard support. There will not be a test at the end of this, you do not need to memorize all of that, but it's important to know for this part. The supports will split up, one going to each of the 2 lanes around the edge of the map, top and bottom respectively. It is their job to ensure the core in their lane gets to kill enemy creeps, the level up and buy items. You do this either by protecting them or harassing enemy heroes away from them. The cores also split up, having one in each lane. Your carry goes into the longest lane, that's bottom if you are the radiant good guys team, or top if you are the bad dire team. The offlaner goes into the opposite lane, and that leaves your mid to go, well, into the middle lane by themselves. Cores, it is your job to farm, gaining strength so you can help your team win the game later on. However, you might need to use your newly found strength to fight the enemy if they start playing aggressively earlier on. This is where position numbers come in. Position 1, the carry, is the most important person to be farming, and are usually the last person to come into an early fight. Inversely, position 5 support is the most sacrificial player, who doesn't get any farm and has to come to all of the fights, usually giving up their life to protect another. So, depending on your number in that list, make sure you are farming respectively. So, you picked your game mode, you know what role you want to play, but what hero from the 100 different heroes do you pick? I'm going to go through a couple of examples per position as a recommendation, one from the new player mode if you're playing that, and then one expanded character. But please note that Valve like to change things a lot, so I will keep this as generic as I can so you can pick up on what makes someone good for beginners. Please check the comments as I may pin changes to these recommendations in the future. Position 1, the carry. In the new player mode, you cannot go wrong with Phantom Assassin. Most of her abilities are very simple, only 2 or 3 of them need to be activated, but perhaps most importantly, if you're ever in a bad place, you can use your Phantom Strike ability to teleport to a nearby friend, who can hopefully save you. Faceless Void would be my expanded recommendation. He has an even better way of getting out of bad situations, his Time Walk, that lets you run away and regain health. And when it comes to the fight, you have a very big and obvious job. You need to place your ultimate, the Chronosphere, on as many enemies as possible and as few allies as possible, and then start hitting the enemies inside of it to win. The mid lane is by no means easy, but from your new player choices, I can recommend Zeus. He recently got his own little leap, which helps him get out of trouble, and outside of that, he just does a lot of damage. He's not a particularly complex character, you just hit a lot of things very hard. Your expanded recommendation is Dragon Knight, kind of on the other side of the spectrum. He is a very tanky mid hero, so if you make mistakes, he'll likely survive anyway. You have some simple damage and a simple stun to help the team. And your ultimate is a transformation which basically just makes you stronger without adding too much complexity. Position 3, the offlaner. Tidehunter is your best bet among the new player game mode heroes. Your job in fights is to hit lots of people with your ultimate. Other than that, you are just a very tanky fish. Centaur Warrunner would be my expanded choice. His job is to be tanky and stun people. He has a chase after them or run away button with his ultimate, which is also very handy, and you do damage to the enemy just for them hitting you. Position 4 and 5, your supports, are more interchangeable, especially as you begin, so I'll give you 3 choices as a support, all from the new player mode, and they're great for both roles. Lion is incredibly simple. 2 of your buttons stop enemies from doing stuff, your ultimate does a big burst of damage, and the last ability is a bit annoying to your enemies. a great support all round. Crystal Maiden is very squishy and easily punished, but you provide a benefit just by existing. All of your allies gain mana regeneration from one of your abilities. Then all of your other abilities hinder enemies and damage them at the same time. And then finally, we have Vengeful Spirit, a favourite of mine actually. Another support that passively helps allies, this time with their damage, and you can help them deal even more damage with your Wave of Terror. With your last two abilities, you have a stun and a swap, the latter which can regularly be used to give your life away to save a friend who is better at the game than you are. Talk about having value as a new player. Tip number 6 is that you do not need to worry about any leveling or item builds. Guides can do the heavy lifting. Dota is a massively complex game because of all the choices you can make. Many of those are choices from your abilities and items. Which do you level first, what item do you buy and when? It can be a nightmare. Fortunately, Dota 2 has an incredible guide system. When you get into a game, open the shop and click here, then immediately pick a guide. The ones near the top are from the current patch and are the highest recommended. You can't usually go wrong with a Tortellini or Immortal Faith guide, but there are other good ones too. Early on in your Dota life, just buying remotely the right items and having roughly the right skills is more than enough. These guides will tell you exactly what to level and what items to buy in what order. Just blindly follow these until you know roughly what you're doing with the rest of the game. Hell, even I follow some of these guides blindly and I have 5,000 hours in the game. Now, my final tip is a bit of a catch-all. It's to go into each game with one learning focus. Maybe you want to know what the Glimmer Cape item can do for you, so you're going to pick Crystal Main support knowing the guide tells you to buy that specific item. Maybe you are going to play position 1 carry, so you can explore the jungle area and learn some of the neutral creeps that you can farm. It doesn't matter what you decide to learn, just pick one thing. Jump into a game, follow the guide up to this point, and practice that thing alongside it. Over time, you will learn to deny creeps, take important objectives like Roshan, and win more games. If you want a follow-up to this, a sort of how to win Dota for beginners guide, then like this video and I'll get you to the next level if we can hit 5,000 likes.